What is up? I am Miguel Antonio, and this is the Live and Create podcast. It's where I interview artists and entrepreneurs about what it means to live a great life and create great things. On today's episode, we have Emma Jo. Emma Jo is a singer-songwriter based in Kansas City, Missouri. Her blend of country, rockabilly, and folk is irresistible to audiences of all ages. You can call it americana, you can call it folkabilly, but either way, you will be taken in by her powerful lyrics and her voice. In this episode, she shares her story of finding the love for performing as a young girl and how that ultimately grew her into the performer she is now. She also continues to share the story of losing her father to suicide, how songwriting was part of her process for healing, and how that music went on to bring healing to many other people. We also dive into the songwriting process, the benefits of working with a talented producer, and how the tortured artist persona is a dangerous stereotype to chase after. It's a great episode. Enjoy.
The Live and Create podcast.
Well, I was talking to Matt Richards a little bit about you. He let me listen to some of the songs that you're working on. Hopefully that was cool. He was like, "You got to check this out." When he found out I was interviewing you, and it sounds awesome. And you're doing, I think your website. What is it? Folkabilly? Is that's what you call it?
Yeah, I've called it folkabilly. Sometimes I call it like soul country. Like I don't
Okay.
really know
I
what to call it exactly.
I could see that. Listening to some of your tracks on Spotify, I could see that. Like there, that little bit of soul underneath there as well. But and I had talked to Jillian, who's a huge fan of you. She's so awesome. But she told me you were touring in a rock band before as well. And I was like
Yes.
trying to put that together, all the tracks I had listened to. And so you got a little bit of rock, a little bit of country, a little bit of soul, everything kind of mixed up in you.
Right. Yeah. When I was growing up, my dad listened to a lot of classic rock and my
Okay.
mom listened to a lot of country. And I just loved all of it. Like every music type that I was exposed to, I loved it. I really dug Motown through a lot of my teenage years. And my dad took me to a Bruce Springsteen concert. That totally changed my life. Like it was just, I've got a lot of influences. It's good.
That's awesome. How long did you do the rock thing?
6 years. So I started my rock band when I was probably 16, I
Okay.
think. Um, we were called Emma Jo and the Poets Down Here for a while.
Nice.
And then we changed our name to just the Poets Down Here. And then we kind of rebranded ourselves and we became 49 Stones because we were doing kind of a progressive rock kind of a thing. And yeah, I mean, it was fun. Like we had such a good time and we're actually still talking and we're still making a little bit of music together. We might be resurrecting a few 49 Stones songs here pretty soon. So
Nice.
we'll see what happens there.
So you're bringing the rock back. You're bringing it back in.
Yeah. I'm kind of interested in it. I'm going through a phase.
That's awesome. I've always told people I really want to be in like a metal band because I do rock and like pop rock stuff, but I want to be in a metal band for like 6 months. Just get it out of my system, jump around, right? So like System of Down kind of crazy stuff. So I don't know if this is like your little detour back to that, even though
Yeah.
country seems to be, well, I say country, but the how did you say it? The
Americana. I think really
Americana,
it's Americana.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a detour. I'm always doing detours. I always thought similarly to how you want to get being a metal band out of your system, I would love to have a party band, like a legitimate cover band party, like through the decades.
That's where you can make some serious money too. I know some cats making some serious money doing that.
Yeah, it might be so addictive that I just never stop.
Then you'll have three bands, and yeah, it's that sounds like life's going to get pretty insane. But maybe you can just pull it off. You can pull it off, right?
Right. I already can't seem to keep my calendar straight, so it could be a problem.
Now, doing the rock band, where was it that you decided you really wanted to go after this Americana sound and Americana vibe?
Well, so there was a little bit of a gap, a hiatus in between the two. So
Okay.
I stopped being in the rock band mostly because I wanted to pursue my education. I was going through another phase. I'm almost finished with my master's degree in history.
That's awesome.
Um, but at the time, I was just starting my bachelor's degree and I was really getting into it and I was loving it. Um, and so I wanted more time to focus on that. And the band was like, it takes up a lot of time to do that kind of stuff. So I was just in a different phase of my life and I took kind of a hiatus from music in general. And then a few years later, I just started having this, you know how it happens when you're a musician. You start having ideas and you start having songs in your head, and then it snowballs. And I decided to start playing acoustic gigs just kind of for fun. And then that snowballed into, well, I'm going to make a record now. So
You're like, I'll just play around and no, let's get for real. Let's put this thing
yeah,
out.
go hard or go home.
now, now you started the band at 16, and from what I was reading, you've been performing all the way since you were like 4 years old. So
Yeah.
that has just been a part of you, it sounds like. Now, when you were 4, was it like performing for your family, or were you actually like going out and doing like recitals and those kind of things? What did that look like at that young?
It's really funny because my mom gave me some like home videos from when I was a kid and I watched them and I realized I had this impulse to entertain from like such an early age. You see me as like a 3-year old begging my dad, like, film me, I'm gonna do a song and dance now. And so definitely at home. But I also, yeah, I think I was in my first talent show, like on a real stage in the little city fairgrounds area, when I was like 4 years old. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's awesome.
I was totally ready to be in front of people.
You were ready to rock it.
I
And
was.
now, so what's curious though, because it seems like that music and the performance, like you said, has been part of you. Now you're also getting your master's in history. Like where did that passion start for you, or is that there as well as a young girl?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always had an interest in history. I always liked school, partly I think because I'm a writer. And so I liked opportunities to express myself through writing, and I got some of that in school. Um, but yeah, I always liked history, and I thought, it's a different kind of intellectual muscle. Like I think I go through phases in my life where sometimes I'm feeling like I want to flex the creative muscles and sometimes I want to do something different, flex the research muscles. Um, so I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'm a weird person or if I think I really believe that artists don't have to be one dimensional. I think artists can
Mm,
have lots of different interests and do lots of different things. Um, just creative people in general. I think our lives are richer when we explore different aspects of ourselves.
absolutely. It seems like songwriters benefit. Like the best songwriters tend to have a very eclectic like world. I was talking to I'm kind of going through a heavy music phase again. So I was talking about Maynard from the band Tool, and
Mm-hmm.
I was sharing how I don't know how familiar you are with him, but he has like 3 different bands, and then he also started a winery, and then he started like a restaurant, and he has this documentary where he's talking about his passion for wine. It's Blood into Wine, and for those listening, you have to go find it. I don't know where you can stream it now. I streamed it on Netflix, but they took it off. But and I really can't find it anywhere. You have to like buy it, and it's like a collector's edition kind of
Oh
deal. But
wow.
to me, it was fascinating to hear him talk about this because I've loved his music, but then to hear him talk about soil and about how soil impacts the character and the notes in wine, I was like, this is nuts. But I think, like you said, it's like it makes someone completely like 5 dimensional, 6 dimensional. Like it just adds all these different layers that then when they approach their writing, they can paint, I think, more beautiful pictures in that way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
How do you see your journey on studying history right now? How do you see it impacting your writing, your craft?
Well, I think it's going to be one of those things that I don't know until I'm doing it. I definitely have noticed a slight difference in my songwriting style since I've been in graduate school. For one, I wrote more. I wrote more after starting graduate school, and I don't know exactly why, because you'd think it would be the opposite.
Right, with all that
But
extra time you have.
right, yeah, I was super busy, but the minute I started graduate school, I started becoming very interested in writing a lot of songs. And I think it was because I was just writing more in general.
Right.
And when you're creating things, I think we tend to have this idea that, well, I have this pitcher full of creativity in me and I'm going to pour some of it out. And then I have to wait for it to replenish and wait for inspiration and wait for this and that. And before I can pour more out. But I really think it's not like that. I really think for creatives, the more you create, the more you create. And that was certainly true for me. I was writing a lot in graduate school, and I started thinking about, you know, just the process of writing and the aspect of creativity and how you make it happen. And I was reading a lot, and the more I read, the more I write too. So
You're
um,
actually taking
I was
something else
reading.
in and growing.
Exactly. Yeah. I was reading so many books, and they had nothing to do necessarily with creativity. They were about, like, 19th century paleontology, but just the more the more words that you input into your brain, I feel like the more you can put out as well.
Right. That's a great point because, like, I notice in my seasons where I tend to be more structured in writing, and whenever I'm more consistent with that, it's like a snowball effect where it just keeps going and keeps going. Then once that stops, it's like it does. If that's when it feels like everything dries up. But then when I do that, then all of a sudden I find myself, writing down on napkins, some line or putting on my notes on phones, kind of popping up there. So with you writing more and obviously studying a whole lot, what does your process look like right now? Like, do you schedule it, or is it a thing where it's like 10 o'clock, you just got done studying, now I feel inspired? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I don't schedule it. Sometimes I go through a season where I'm really trying to, like, if I'm definitely working on an album or a set of songs, sometimes I will schedule and I'll try to write some every day. But right now I'm not scheduling. I just try to make a little bit of time every week, make sure I'm creating something each week, and I don't put a whole lot of pressure on myself as far as it has to be a song, or I have to finish a song, or I have to write this kind of a song. I just kind of try to make sure that I'm spending at least a little bit of time every week creating. And I have no other kinds of creative talent. I can't draw. I can't even cook. But
I feel in that our oldest son, he cooks like everything for us. Like if
I
like
love that.
tonight we had steak for dinner, and I went in, he was like napping on the couch. I was like, "Hey, do you want to do the steaks tonight?" But he was like so tired. I was like, "I'll just put it in. It won't be as good, but I'll just put it
Well, that's a nice that you have a kid that's able to do that.
It's
Uh,
helpful, but he's about to go to college, so I don't know how we're gonna eat after that. We'll have to
oh
see. So,
no.
but
You're gonna have to learn
basically, I
some
struggle
tricks.
at that.
But yeah, I don't have other kinds of creative outputs necessarily. Except for I dabble in graphic design a little bit. So
Okay.
I try to create something every week. And sometimes that's a song, and sometimes it's a song in a genre that I would never put out. But I just think I just think it's important to keep your creative juices flowing. And so I don't know. I try to make sure I'm doing it pretty consistently.
That's cool. Yeah, it's funny, like songs that I would never perform. I just wrote a country song. Like it just kind of came out as a country song. So I'm not a country artist in
Right.
any way. And at least I don't think so. So I sent it to a friend of mine who is actually a country artist. And he's like, "Hey, let's write this together." It's like, "Yes, please help me." Cause I'm way out of my realm in this. But even that, when I used to be with a band, it was like everything was about a very particular sound. And I think as a solo artist, I feel a little more freedom to explore different vibes, different sounds. I do love the Americana thing. Like Jason Isbell right now is a huge influence of mine. It's funny. I'm listening to Tool and I'm listening to Jason Isbell. It's a strange combination, but it's like that vibe. I love it. Now I can explore it a little bit more and have that freedom a little bit. So now for you, you have a band that backs you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you consider yourself a solo artist, or is this like your band? This is your people.
So I consider myself a solo artist because I say I have a band, but really it's flexible as far as what players I use. I've been fairly consistent over the last couple projects about the people I'm using. But I want to keep that freedom to bring in new folks and bring in new instruments, and especially in the studio. Like this time I brought in banjo, whereas my whole last CD didn't have any banjo at all. But I thought for these couple of songs that I've just recorded, Queen of the Silver Lining and Same Moon,
which comes out like this Friday.
That would be cool.
Right? Sorry, your Queen of the Silver Lining comes out Friday, right?
It does.
Yeah. Now this comes out 3 weeks from when we're actually talking, so it'll already be out there, but I'll definitely link that out. It's a great song. Everyone listening needs to go listen to it because it's killer.
Thank you.
Anyways, back to where you were at.
Yeah. So when I play live, and that's not very often because of coronavirus, but
right.
I'm hopeful that this summer I'll be able to schedule at least a few full band shows, and I'll be able to bring in some of my hired players and say, this is going to be a full band Imajo performance. And that's always really fun for people who follow my music because I don't do it very often. And so it's like a fun event whenever I'm playing full band on my original solo material, because I do a lot of solo acoustic performances.
That's awesome. Now the banjo, you sounded very excited about that. And for you, was it like, I'm going to put this real stamp of Americana on it? Like, or is it just something you've always wanted on a record?
Yeah. I think there was an element of I want it to be Americana, or I want to make sure that it stays in that arena. Because Queen of the Silver Lining especially took a little bit of a turn. I mean, it's a little bit darker feeling, and it's almost kind of alternative in the way that it expresses itself. But the banjo came in and just grounded it, and it just sounds so cool. And my banjo player, Julie Bennett Hume, I sang backup on her last record. And then she came in and did banjo for me, and she brought a 100-year-old banjo. And I was like, nice. History nerd, I'm freaking out.
Did she tell you the whole story so you know the whole vibe of that banjo?
Well, it wasn't, I mean, it's not like it was in her family for 100 years or anything.
Oh,
okay.
But not as cool. It's just old.
But I did love it. It was awesome.
And what you should do is make up a different story about it each time you play, and just see which one sticks. I don't know.
That would be great.
Now, I know you worked with Matt on these last few tracks, and I was just curious about, one reason, the last several interviews I've talked about the value of working with a producer with several different artists, and I was curious about your journey of working with a producer and what you enjoy about that, what the challenges are of that.
Love working with a producer. I highly recommend it. And that's for a lot of reasons. One of which is, I write a song and I have a vision in my head of maybe what it's eventually going to be. I have a general direction. But I'm not one of these artists that I have a full production in my head of, I know exactly what I want. I know exactly what the end product is going to sound like. And so for me working with Matt, I know that he's a creative person too. And so it gives me that much more creativity to add to the mix. And he has a different perspective. And so I was able to come to him and say, all right, so here's these songs. First of all, help me figure out which ones I should actually record. And he listens through and says, okay, I think this one's a winner. but then also I said, here's some production styles that I like. Here's some music I'm listening to lately. Here's kind of what I'm going for. And these are the artists I want to be playing on the same stations as. And, help me come up with some ideas of what would be cool here. And he knocked it out of the park. Of course. I mean, Matt's amazing. And
Yes.
he brought elements to it that I wouldn't have thought, like, just the way he tracked my guitar, my acoustic guitar, we tracked it in like 2 different octaves. I mean, it was just, he did cool stuff that I would never have thought of. And that's because he has experience and knowledge that I just don't have. So I loved working with him. Can't wait to work with him again in the future. He's awesome.
Yeah, and I think producers, like, they can also just see, like, it's like they're out of the mix. They're not personally married to the product, if you will. Like, I know, like, for us, we're constantly writing these songs, often very personal songs, but they can see things maybe we can't. And did you find, was any of that process challenging? Or, like, I'm not sure if you worked with producers in the past as well, but at any point working with producers, did you find any challenges in that?
The only thing that can be challenging, I think, depending on what kind of person you are, is when you're an artist and it's your baby, sometimes it can be hard, I think, for people to relinquish, like, but this is my baby. You can't do anything to it. Don't try to change it. I definitely went through that earlier in my career, but I think you kind of get over it as you do it more and more. I mean, I've been in the studio enough times that now I have kind of learned, if you trust the person you're working with, that it's going to be okay. And that was the thing. That's why it's so important to pick someone awesome that you totally vibe with. And that's
Agreed.
what was great about working with Matt Richards, because I immediately instinctively trusted him. I knew he understood what I was trying to say. And, I never felt like, oh, Matt's going to try to take over this project and make it his own. Like, I never got that vibe. And so, we get along super well, and we, are totally mean to each other, which is a great sign.
Absolutely. I that's the producer that worked with my last band. His name's Josh Gleave. Like, he started out as a producer and became just a really good, still to this day, good friend of mine. And that's how it was. It just got to a point where you become so close where you're like, yeah, that sucked. Try it again. And no one's feelings are hurt. It's just like
Exactly.
like he would like he was like, hey, that's cool if you want to just never do anything with music again. So why don't you try to those kind of things? And it makes it like it's a fun vibe. I reference him probably too much. He's probably annoyed on this podcast, but my oldest son got to go to Nashville the last time we recorded with him, and he was just like cracking up, like watching us go back and forth. And yeah, and even
Yeah.
today, like I was working with Matt, and he's helping me on my next projects. And we spent probably a good chunk of it just talking about things that actually weren't necessarily part of music. And he kept apologizing, and I'm like, well, dude, it like what I've enjoyed is that connection with people, and then out of that flows like a good band, like probably the bandmates, like you said, you have so many people starting to be the same ones on your records. There's a trust there, a camaraderie, which is fun.
Exactly. You got to build that relationship. And that's what we've been doing. I think I talked to Matt like I talked to my 2 brothers.
That's awesome.
I'm like, shut up. Quit making the office quotes.
Yeah, there was a lot of Office quotes today, a whole lot of Office quotes. And I thought I knew The Office, but instead I realized I didn't, because he knows some super deep cuts, and people are like, who is Matt? And his podcast drops today, but or
Okay,
tomorrow.
well,
His podcast drops tomorrow. So if you're listening to us 3 weeks from now, go back through the archives. You can listen to his
yeah.
podcast.
Nobody knows the office like Matt Richards knows the office.
I'd agree. I've only known him a short while now, but I'd have to agree. Now, for you, I was reading about songwriting has been a therapeutic process as well for you. You talked about the loss of your father to suicide, and for you, when you're writing, are there songs that pour out of some of those places that you kind of keep for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the song you just referenced, it's called Your Story Isn't Over Yet. For those of you who
Mm-hmm.
don't know, it's on my last album, Brave. Um, and that song was not intended to be shared
So that
initially.
was the one you were going to keep for yourself.
That was the one I
Wow.
was going to keep for myself. It was the most deeply personal song I have ever written. And I mean, I've told this story before, but I think it's worth repeating because it's such a part of the creative process and the cathartic process of just dealing with things that happen to you in life. I wrote that song like just a few days after my dad passed, and I had gone to pick up a lot of his personal effects,
Hmm.
and his computer was sitting on my desk, and some of his other things were kind of scattered around my writing room where I was doing most of my music. And I just remember looking around and thinking, like, all this stuff should not be here. Like, it's not right. And then I started writing about all your things are mixed up and where they shouldn't be. And started writing and was just bawling. Like, every line, I was just crying. And every line hurt to write.
Yeah.
But I kept going because I felt like I've just got to get this out. Like, it's just got to come out. And afterwards, I definitely felt like this is a personal song that I'm going to keep. But I was a part of some Facebook groups that were like basically support groups for people who had lost someone to suicide. And I shared, a little informal recording of it for those people. And I
Right.
started getting messages. Can you make this shareable? Can you make it public? I really
Hmm.
want to share this with my friends and family and blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, long story short is I ended up recording the song. I've gotten people who have reached out to me and said, this is the song that I played at my sister's funeral, and, it means so much to me. Just I've gotten amazing messages from people all over the world. And, it means a lot to me. Something that I was going to keep private has ended up impacting people.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sorry that I shared it.
Yeah. Well, and I, as an artist and knowing songs that I wanted to keep to myself, I can only imagine how much courage that took to put that out there. But it sounds like the impact it's making is well worth it.
Yeah,
Definitely well worth it. And it's interesting to me because it seems like it's the songs where we as songwriters where we expose ourselves maybe the most, which gets scary. It's like there's stuff that I'll put out there that I'm like, this is like scary. Like this is something that felt so personal, but it seems like that's where people connect the most to
exactly.
and
Yeah, it's
gravitate. But
uncomfortable for us. People sometimes ask me, like, do you like writing? And I've heard other artists say, I don't like writing, but I like having written. And I kind of identify with that.
I've never heard that. That's funny.
It's good. Authors say it sometimes too. I identify with it because it's like writing is this painful process where you're putting your insides out onto paper,
Yeah.
and it sucks sometimes to do, but it's worth it because you see at the end, you see what you've created, and other people get to react. And that's what making art is all about, is that interplay between you and the people that you're making the art for.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like they have to it has to live out there. It's like too many songs. I there are songs that I end up just keeping, but mainly because I don't think they're like marketable
Same.
in general. But there are some where it's like I felt like it did have something, but I just didn't want to share it. I remember there was a song that I'll release in 2022. I have my releases for this year ready. That's going to start come out, and then 2022 is what I'm working out currently. And
Awesome.
there's a song there that when I dumped a bunch of songs to people, I just kind of threw that one song in there, and I'm like, I don't know. That ended up being the one that everyone that was reviewing it was like, yeah, that's the one.
Of course.
And to me, I was like, it was a song that felt very vulnerable, and maybe even offensive to other people because of some of the things I was unpacking. And even some of the people, they're like, I don't even agree with the things you're saying, but I can tell it's real. And it's like, I think as a songwriter, that's what really connects, is real. Even if it makes you angry or hurt or sad, the real is what connects with people. So
Yeah, people respond to authenticity.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, the last two questions, which can sometimes take a while, so I want to give some time for that. But the live and create idea. Okay, so I'm curious for you. How would you define right now in your life living a great life?
So for me, as an artist, living a great life to me is living a life where I can create. I've created space for myself to create. I do not buy into, and you may disagree, I do not buy into the idea that artists should be starving. I do not buy into the idea that artists should be tortured in order to create good art, or that we have to be mentally unstable. I just don't think that's true. I mean, certainly there are people who have struggled with mental illness and with, being poor or whatever, and created good art. But I don't think that's a prerequisite. I think that artists can be happy and healthy and still create. And so that is what I am aiming for in my life. I want to have a life that is happy and healthy, and in which I get to create the things I want to create without anyone telling me what to do. And to just keep doing it. And I think we've touched on in this interview, like, I'm almost manic in my in my set of interests. Like, I just want to do what I want to do.
Like, oh, this looks good. Let's go try this. Do that.
I'm gonna go have a party band now. Okay.
2022 party band coming out. Joe.
That might be my party band year. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, hell, all the parties people are gonna be having because they can actually hang out.
Exactly. It's perfect timing.
It is perfect timing for that. But no, it's funny because I wouldn't have agreed with you necessarily in the past, but it's something I definitely agree with you. But I had subjected myself to that mentality, down to the point where, like, my story, I've dealt with depression, OCD, and those kind of things throughout my life, to the point where I was almost afraid to take medicine to help because I was afraid I would lose my creativity. I remember having that conversation with my counselor, having that conversation with friends, but like, now I look back on that, I was like, bro, you were insane. Like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like, take this medicine that's going to help you, go through the process that's going to help you. And I think artists, at least for me, and I've seen it happen a lot, they would get it stuck in our heads, like this almost like romanticized idea of what an artist is. But I think art can come when you're healthy, when you're taken care of, and you have stability. I think art can thrive in those moments.
Absolutely. I think it's like Vincent van Gogh syndrome. We all think that we have to be Vincent van Gogh, that we have to just like,
because that sounds fucking awesome. cut parts of her body off, and
we have to be, completely immersed in illness and in despair. Like, we kind of, I think we've all gone through it. A lot of artists, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of artists go through that, where we think, nope, I have to torture myself, because that is how you create art. And I think that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah. Well, and it's tragic too, where I love rap as well. It's a big part of my musical diet. And Juice WRLD was an artist who was phenomenal. He was so young and he's coming up, but like literally all of his songs were about how he could not stop taking drugs. And then he died in an overdose, I think about 2 years ago. And DMX, who's 50, died of an overdose. He was still battling those demons. And that's where that self-destructive behavior is, like, they get trapped in it. And I can say we, because I felt trapped in that same cycle. For you, I'm curious, what are some of the choices that you make to make sure that your life is happy and thriving?
So, one of the things is, I've tried to give myself some semblance of financial stability by, yeah, I mean, some people think it's totally uncool to be a musician and to go to school and get a job. But I find that I am healthier and happier when I have some form of financial stability, and when I can spend my free time as actual free time. And that's important to me because in my free time, I want to create. And if I'm putting myself in the position where I'm putting pressure on my creativity, like, okay, creativity, you got to give me a hit now.
You got 45 minutes. It better be good.
I like to, Liz Gilbert wrote a book called Big Magic, and I read it, and it's like my creative Bible. She says in it that you should like protect your creativity at all costs, like protect it, give it room, give it space, give it, don't put any pressure on it as far as like having to make your living for you. Just give it, feed it everything that you have in your free time. And that is what I've tried to do. I've really tried to make my creativity into this protected bubble of like, you are my special thing. You are my little squishy.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to protect you at all costs.
Like, get back.
I don't want to get burned out because I love music so much. And music, I want it to be the thing that I escape to. And it is right now. And so that makes me really super happy.
Well, I wish I would have had this conversation like 10 years ago, because I think it would have been helpful to me, because I went on the, get up at 5 a.m. all the way till you I would like fall asleep at midnight tweeting, and then the next day get back up at like 5 a.m. I'm still tweeting. And like there were so many good things that happened out of that season, but what it ultimately ended up was complete and utter burnout and almost financial ruin. And like I didn't even want to touch music. Like I was almost done with it. It was actually my wife who like encouraged me to like get back into it after that season, because yeah, there and that's why I keep thinking there has to be a better way. And I think for COVID, I think it slowed down a lot of artists. I know it slowed me down, and it was helpful to think about like, hey, life doesn't have to be going crazy constantly nonstop. But what was the name of that book again? That sounds really awesome.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. It's called Big Magic. It's by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Okay.
Yeah, she's an author. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. So like that's how a lot of people know her. But she wrote this book to explore what is creativity and how does it work. And I read it because I'm super interested in how creativity works. So it was honestly kind of life-changing for me in the way that I look at creating art.
That is cool. That might be a good season for me too, because like I said, I'm pretty regimented, and for me, it's worked really well to where I'm like, you have an hour, write a song, and then I'll do that for like 3 hours, and it just forces it. But even after a while, those things began to get stale, so I had to like try a different method for a while, and so like that'll be cool. I have to check that out. Hopefully, people listen and will check that out as well. Now, like same realm creativity right now in your life, how would you define creating great things?
Well, I try to look at it as similarly to how I look at consuming great art. So we all know what it feels like to consume great art. And so with my music, that's what I'm trying to do. When I go to a Bruce Springsteen concert, there are certain feelings that are evoked. Hopefully I will go to another one someday.
It's happening. People are starting. I saw AJR just, do you know the band AJR at all?
No.
They're a phenomenal band, but they just released, they're doing like limited shows with like, they have testing there and all sorts of stuff. And they're like a huge band. So it's coming back. It's coming back. Maybe a little longer for Bruce Springsteen, just because, he has a whole fuck ton of people in the audience.
Sprint Center. Yeah, I know. So, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm trying to create: songs, music that will, really travel through people's lives with them and change over time the way that I've experienced with music that I've listened to for, now my whole life or half my life or whatever. Just that those things, great art can really just become a part of your life. And even with my own songs, and I think you've probably experienced this too, a song that you wrote a long time ago, like it changes meaning over time.
Right.
When you sing it now, it's like, okay, it doesn't mean the same thing it did to me then. It's different now. But and I hope that happens with people who listen to my music as well. So creating great art to me is giving people something to get through the day with, and giving people something to travel through their lives with.
That's awesome. That's a really cool perspective. I'm curious because you mentioned the Bruce Springsteen thing again. What was it that inspired you? Like, what can you think back to that moment when you were there? Like, was it the whole experience, or was there like a moment that you were like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. This is me.
Yeah. So it was 2002, probably. He was on the Rising tour, which was the Rising was an album that was a response to 9/11. And 9/11 was a formative moment for me. I was pretty young, and really kind of cast a certain pallor over my life, I guess, for all of my teenage years and everything. It was just something that really shaped the world that I lived in. And so the songs that he was singing were responding to something that was so monumental in my life that it just meant a lot to me. I loved hearing an artistic response to something so huge. And so part of it was the songs, but also I can recall towards the end of the show, there was like an encore and then an extended encore where they were playing Kansas City. And I thought that was so cool. Like, they were playing Kansas City. And then everybody walked off the stage and the piano player was still playing, like he just wouldn't stop. And so then they all just came back out. And I was like, oh man, this is so cool. It's okay to have serious songs where you're writing about things that are devastating and still have a party. That's life. And one of my favorite songs on that album is called Mary's Place. And it's about grief and loss and a house party. And I just think that's the way it is. That is life.
Right
and
there.
So, yeah, when I was at that concert as a kid, I just thought, you know what? It's okay to explore all parts of life with your art. And that is what I want to do.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, let everyone know how they can find you and find your music.
So you can find me on the web at my website, emmajomusic.com. And I'm on facebook.com/EmmaJoRocks. You should be able to find me just by typing in Emma Jo, J-O. And then on Instagram and most of the other platforms, I'm at Vox Princess, V-O-X Princess. Vox is Latin for voice, of course. So that's pretty nerdy, but that's been my handle for years. So I'm sticking with it.
You're holding strong on that.
Yeah. I always thought like maybe I'll have a pop project and I'll actually call my artist name Vox Princess.
There you go. And that'll be 2023, right after the party band blows up and then the pop world comes. So
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for making the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Miguel. This was awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Live and Create podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment or a review.
The Live and Create podcast.